thank you everyone for coming out. What a beautiful audience this is. And this is an idea that the Art Students League and myself just kind of brainstormed, and it fits well that we have two very esteemed artists joining me on the stage here. And I know you saw the work when you came in. The work speaks for itself. It's honoring a legend that is a cultural Brooklyn, almost like an artifact, but he is just the epitome of rags to riches, the underdog, and his skill really took him from street corner to the radio and in everyone's boomboxes around the world. And I'm very excited and happy to share my story as well as Jules and Steven's story here about how we came up with ideas for representing the Notorious B.I.G, hip hop, and just fine arts, right? I quickly want to tell a quick story. So 20 years ago, I entered the League's doors, and I was brought here by my mentor, right? My mentor, his name is Glenn Rupchand. He told me, he always said, you have to go to the League, you have to go to the League. You stop creating, you must go back. And when he brought me here, I decided that, yes, I saw the League. There's no way I could not join this very incredible organization, institution. So I just want to note that I'm dedicating, for me, this talk to him, because in 1976, he came to this country from Trinidad to study at Pratt, and Pratt told him, you need more credits, go to the League. So he came to the League, and then he took classes and continued his studies at Pratt. Tomorrow, I'll be talking at Pratt as a visiting artist. So this is like a very incredible moment for me to be here. It's really beautiful. Thank you. So I really want to get into like origin stories, right? I'll tell a quick story of how I met Jules and Steven. So I'm in Barney Holt's class, and one of the students, Miriam Ginsburg, she came, she said, have you met Jules? I said, no, who is he? He said, he is in my husband's class, Max, and he's an incredible, talented painter and sculptor. You have to meet him. So one day he was sculpting in the room next to Barney's, which is the stone carving room, and I went up to you and introduced myself, and that was our first meeting, and I was happy to have met you and develop a relationship with you. And quickly with Steven, I was hanging out at a photography opening, and Ernie Panicoli showed up, and I asked, he's a very famous hip hop photographer, and so I asked the photographer whose show this is, can you introduce me to Ernie? And she did, and the first thing out of his mouth he said, do you know Steven Cartoccio? He does work honoring hip hop giants, and he asked for permission from the families or the estate. I said, I have to meet him. So we connected on, I think, Instagram, and then we met and we developed a relationship. So I'm very happy that we're here to discuss our work, our process, our journeys, and I want to begin with an origin story. So, Jules, how did you, develop yourself as an artist? What were those first moments that you realized that art was the direction for you?
Sure. First, I'd like to thank you for this invite. And thanks for everyone coming out. It's such an honor to be up here. This is my first time up on this stage at the League, and I consider this place, thank you, almost a second home. I've been here for years that I cherish. As far as my story, I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. And I attribute a lot of my artistic journey on my father, who grew up in this city, who was an aspiring artist, went to the High School of Art and Design, Music and Arts, up on 135th. But he didn't pursue arts, but he retained that passion and poured all that into my sister and I. And I can remember having a flair for art day one. My parents still have a bunch of those drawings and paintings from then. But, a lot of my peers and contemporaries had to fight tooth and nail to pursue this path of art, whereas my father and both my parents were the wind behind my back, unconditional love and support that really propelled me in this direction. So, having a father who was born and raised in New York, I always heard these legendary stories about these streets and the arts, I would visit New York as a child, and in particularly 1982. I was of an age where I could really recognize my surroundings. And again, that was around the era of the beginnings, the birth of hip hop. It did start in the late 70s, but it was really catching steam in 82, But just to quickly move forward, I attended School of Arts, School of Visual Arts here. Graduated in 99. And at that time, I was trying to surround myself by a bunch of serious students, like Nicholas Uribe. I'm not sure if you know him, an incredible painter, one of the top painters out today. And I was kind of following his lead. And his lead was, he had heard of a place called the Art Students League. And for those serious students at School of Visual Arts, they were coming up here for extra courses. And that was in 99 when I first attended my first classes here, And I've periodically studied here since then. 5 years on, 2 years off, 7 years, a year off, and I absolutely love it. It's my means of keeping myself sharp. As an artist, it's so crucial to stay in front of that live model, to paint and draw from life, or sculpt, And I find myself here in this unique position here, showcasing a painting, talking about hip hop.
Yeah. Love to see it, love to hear it. Yeah. I'm class of 99 too.
Are you?
Yeah, class of 99 at Parsons School of Design. And that's the interesting between us. We all went to New York City art institutions. We developed our skills, and we continued here at the Art Students League. So Steven, I'd love to hear your origin story.
For sure. So I think when I came here about 15 years ago, that was when I really got serious about becoming an artist. I had just graduated with a degree in advertising, and I had taken an internship, and it kind of just like rubbed me the wrong way, because they were kind of like, I thought I was going to be artistic in that job, and they were kind of just like, stick to the clip art, we don't need the creative stuff like that. So I was like, this can't be what it's going to be. So I decided to go full steam art, and everybody said, you got to come here, like this is where the real deal artists do it. So I took a summer of Porcuz at Crochet class, and that guy just made everything like click for me. Like the way he explained things, the way he simplified forms for me. I started sculpting really for the first time there, and I decided that I wanted to build up a portfolio, and went to the School of Visual Arts. And when I was there, I found stop motion animation. So kind of super different from what I'm doing now. I wanted to have a show on Adult Swim, like Cartoon Network, like that's what I wanted to do. So I started writing stop motion animation. Once I graduated from there, I began doing 2D animation. If you see the stuff up here, the 2D show didn't work. It was a show called Concrete Jungle. It was about humans and animals living together in New York. And there was always a hip hop theme to it. There was always scored with music. But at that time, a show called BoJack Horseman came out. And that became super, super popular on Netflix, as well as a show called Animals on HBO. So I found that it wasn't the time for my show. And that really, really, that was like a low point where I put so much time into Concrete Jungle and the animation and writing episodes. I had, 10 episodes ready to go, but I put it on the side and just kind of took the name and started doing art as Concrete Jungle. And I went to Comic-Con and I kind of saw all these toys and statues, and I was like, this is where I can take kind of what I've learned and put my own spin on it. And I took my Bulldog character, Frank, and I did a mashup with like Deadpool and different Marvel characters, but I wanted something that wasn't just parody art. And I realized that there was no kind of hip-hop toys that had been done to a high level of detail. So I wanted to do like really, really realistic portraiture of them and just incorporating all the music into it. So I started with alter ego rappers, and the number one for that is Kool Keith. Right? Kool Keith has 50 aliases. So it was going to be kind of just rappers with alter egos. But then some of the guys from Wu-Tang reached out, and I did something with Ghostface. One thing led to another, and people from Biggie's family came, and they had seen the work, and I was able to put together this piece that you can see in the front. Right here, I started traditional sculpture, but I've done everything in digital now. A program called ZBrush. I use 3D printing, and that just allows me to get kind of these textures like this that would be really difficult to do with just traditional methods of sculpting. So yeah, I've kind of joined my traditional and now the digital and 3D printing, and I've been able to work with some of the greatest artists I used to listen to as a kid. I find myself where albums are turning 25 and 30. We're celebrating them again, and I'm getting to make sculptures with these guys that I grew up with, Nas, Outkast, Notorious B.I.G. So it's been really, really incredible to kind of come full circle to just work in a genre that I love, that's been the soundtrack to everything I've done in my life pretty much.
Wow, those are great stories. I love how, as you continue your journey, just opportunities just come to you, and that's what it is that's most fascinating about art, is as you continue to pursue your studies, continue to pursue your practice, there's always some opportunity that will come up to change the trajectory of where your art will go. For myself, it all started here at the League for sculpture. And let me backtrack. Like I said, I graduated Parsons in 1999, and it was a great experience. I loved being in the city at that time. I lived in the dorms, so I would try to go to the hip hop parties at Tramps or over at SOBs, Club USA. There's a lot of things that were happening in the city. It was very exciting. It was a very exciting time for hip hop in those years. And I mentioned earlier that my mentor brought me here because after I graduated Parsons, I was doing tech work, and my mentor said, you have to get back into doing art. So when I came to the League, I took classes. I found the sculpture classes. I was hooked. It was one of those things where I couldn't believe they were making these large-scale sculptures right here in this school. I was taking drawing classes. I just didn't know. So I signed up for Barney Hoda's Saturday class. I was still working a 9 to 5, but I came here every weekend to do my sculpting. And then the League had this program called Model to Monument. And Model to Monument was this program that offered a bare bones learning aspect to doing public sculpture. Everything from creating an idea into a maquette and taking that maquette and exploring various ways of making it into a public sculpture. Creating drawings, technical drawings that were needed for fabricators, and then you learn about approaching the Parks Department and giving a presentation about your work and explaining how it would hold up against the elements. Very rigorous but yet rewarding program that still happens to this day. They renamed it Works in Public, but that was the first true introduction into the public art spectrum for me. And once I did it, it was hooked because it offered multiple ways of problem solving and bringing a lot of my creativity together. I mentioned Barney Holds, and one of the things I wanted to talk about was in your journey, you encounter angels, right? And these angels help you make a decision as to where to go, or they influence you. And I'm curious, for each of you, whether it's from high school, you mentioned your dad, being an artist, whether it's from high school, deciding on college, what art school to go to, and where you would put your art next, who were the angels that came into your life at that particular juncture to influence those moments for your career, from high school, college, or students league? There had to be some individuals.
Yeah.
This is for you, Jules.
Okay, I think my first angel, and this is based on, not to toot my horn, but as a child, I was that art kid in class. Everyone looked at it like, oh, you're the best artist in class. And I did not meet my peer until I came to SVA. That's where, and I tell a lot of people that it's so crucial to surround yourself with someone who's equal or greater than, for growth. And at SVA, that's where I met my first two angels, and that was Garen Baker and Max Ginsberg, who teach here as well, as we know. And what they were teaching me and instilling in me was such another level of, just a kid with a raw talent to truly understanding your abilities or what your focus should be,
Yeah.
Those two were my first two early angels. Career-wise, an important person in my life was Dream Hampton, who was started out as a hip-hop writer for The Source, I believe, The Source magazine. And being one of the first female writers of this hip-hop magazine, she knew everyone, in industry, not only in hip-hop, but film writing. And she did such a grand introduction to industry. And definitely she was an angel in my life. Yeah.
Wow.
Grew up, yeah.
Very important.
Yeah.
High school, I was kind of that same kid, and I don't think I took art seriously because there was nobody else that I was really competing with at that time. I felt like it wasn't until I got to college and saw, I'm very competition driven, like I want to try and be the best. And when I got out of my small high school, I realized that there is a ton of talent obviously out there. So that really lit a fire under me. And when I came here, Porku was like that instructor for me, man, because he just, like I said before, he simplified everything and just made me see things so clearly. Like I wanted to be able to draw like that. I wanted to be able to sculpt like that. And when I got to SVA, I met this artist, Dave Cortez, who was like an OG in the toy world, worked for McFarlane, one of the best sculptors I've ever seen. I wanted to sculpt like him, and he actually got me my first job, which I still have now, 15 years later, with this artist, Barry X. Ball. So I do some digital sculpting for him, and he's been somebody for me too, because he just puts so much time and detail into everything, and working for him, I had to learn how to do that as well, which I might not have had that patience if I hadn't come to work with an artist like that. So I would say, yeah, Porku, Cortez, and Barry X. Ball have just really helped me to become the artist that I am today, for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, these angels are really important because they push you, they show you another way, and sometimes they hold you accountable for your own development,
How about yourself? Who were your angels?
Well, I'm fortunate and lucky enough to have my angel, my competitor, here in the room with me, my brother.
Nice.
Since we were kids on the island of Trinidad, to keep us busy, our aunt and grandmother would give us paper and pencil and say, go out to the gallery and draw something, right? So he would be on one side of the gallery is pretty much a porch, right? He'd be on one side, I'd be on the other side. He would choose a car. He's the bigger brother, so he would choose the car that was more popular. And, we would have we live in a hill, and the cars always drove by. When the car of your choice drove by, you drew a little detail, and whoever finished first would win, right? And it didn't stop there. We created toys. When we came to this country, we saw G.I. Joe, we saw Transformers, and we wanted to make those toys ourselves. We would draw them and create them and make them out of cardboard, and we always kept busy with our hands. So my brother was always there as a competitor, to keep me, keep my tools sharp, right? But then, you enter, school, and I would say in high school, my art teacher, her name is Miss Tanous. And my brother had her too. He was 2 years before me, so he had Miss Tanous. And like yourselves, I felt like I was, that dude. I was on the yearbook staff. I was taking photography. I was drawing and making paintings for the actual yearbook. And she told me about a program named Governor School of the Arts. And she said, you have 2 weeks to create a portfolio and submit your work. And this work got me into the program. And from there, it was off to college. Friends in college helped me to find myself. One particular instructor, his name was, I'm forgetting his name, that's pretty sad. Dave Pasalacqua. And Pasalacqua, in Parsons and at Pratt, he taught. And he would gather students, some of the best students, and take them to Disney World to draw and teach them how to do reportage drawing. I left that school, and my mentor told me to come to the Art Students League. So Dave Pasalacqua, Tanous, my mentor Glenn Boop Chan, and here at the Art Students League would be Barney Hodis. Barney Hodis really allowed me to develop my sculpting skills, gave me the freedom to try new things. And yeah, those are my angels. But here's the thing that I think it's important for other artists to know, is that when you're doing your work, you are alone, but you need a community to grow. And as you're alone, you do have, like myself, most artists have those times of self-doubt, right? Am I good enough? Am I going to do this? How do you, if you do have self-doubt, how do you manage, those thoughts? How do you manage, to keep yourself going? What are the skills you've developed to be mentally balanced and to get yourself to continue to work?
Mm-hmm. Those days are definitely there, self-doubt. To answer that question, I think one aspect of it is I don't have a plan B. There's only this, And,
that helps.
And that puts a different level of flame under your feet,
Yep.
And even within that, self-doubt comes. And you believe in there's tomorrow. There's always tomorrow.
Yep.
I'm always, self-doubt can come in with a particular project or a piece. As a practicing artist, I like to juggle a few pieces at one time, allow me to stop looking at it and come back with fresh eyes. If one project or piece is failing, I lean upon the others, whereas other pieces may be more successful, And just, I'm an eternal optimist. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Right.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think for those of you that don't know, I make sculptures that are mass-produced. So, for example, the Biggie that we had there was 850 of those. I make the first one, and then that gets sent to a factory to follow my prototype exactly. So I think the biggest problem that I have a lot is that like by the time that the public sees the work that I've made, it's like a year later. And I feel that it's already like, I wish I could change all these things within it. So I struggle with that a lot because I want to just go back and fix so many different things. But I think the thing that keeps me going has just been the response from the community that I've had, from the collectors that I've had. I do conventions a lot, like Comic-Con has been really, really great for me. And it's really cool to see all the collectors come up to the booth and just tell me how much they love the pieces and what they mean to them. So I think it's the support of my collectors and community that tell me how much the pieces mean to them that really keeps me going. And like you said, I think you have a bunch of pieces going at once. I think that that's very, very important to just keep you sharp and to also have different pieces going in different mediums, because I think it helps you just to improve your talents, like with sculpting, painting, drawing, everything. If you can kind of rotate them around, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, yeah. For me, when it comes to self-doubt, I experience that often when I am developing a project. One of the things that get me through really is the timeline, right? There's timelines that I work with for, public sculptures, and because there's so many moving parts, I'll do a drawing, and then the drawing has to go to the fabricator to get that worked out. And I'll be back and forth with conversation. While that's going, I am sculpting the bust of my subject. So there's so many moving parts to what I'm doing. Once that's finished, I have to cast it, and I give it to the foundry to get bronze, and just managing time and managing, family, home. My kids keep me going. So there's so many different moving parts to my life, and I stay busy, and I make sure that there is goals set every day or every week, so that the doubt kind of stays behind, because the pressure of getting these goals completed is really what pushes me. One of the things that one of the stories I love to tell is, speaking of family, in 2013, my wife and I were invited to a wedding in Salzburg, Austria. And I'm like, we gotta go and make this a trip. Like, let's go to Prague, and let's go to Vienna, and just make this whole thing a moment for us. So we did, Went to Prague first, and saw the sights there, did a little opera house, and try to live above our means and be a little bit more astute than we normally would be, right? Dress up every day. So by the time we got to Vienna, we tried it again, went to see museums, the Klimt work, and it's beautiful. By the time we got to Salzburg, which is the tail end of the trip and the wedding, we were so excited. We were staying at the Sound of Music Museum, or the castle, and beautiful wedding. But the day after is when I really had an epiphany. While walking around Salzburg with the wedding team, I noticed that there was Mozart everywhere. Mozart sculptures, Mozart square, museums, his house is a museum, where he performed is named after him. And I'm thinking, my God, this is a city, a town that really cherished their musical genius. And they know Mozart is very popular around the world. So they decided to create this legacy here in his hometown, so for visitors to come and view. And I thought, my God, I'm in New York City. I love hip hop, and hip hop has traveled across the world many times and has influenced multiple generations, whether they are in a beautiful Paris or whether they're in a war-torn country. Hip hop is inspiring the youth to speak their mind and speak their story. When I saw both of your work with Biggie, that felt like it was a community supporting this this idea of legacy, of propping up one central figure, and presenting it to the fans around the world, presenting hip hop around the world, and not just, a really random drawing, but like high quality work that has, both of you have a track record of learning, studying, and practice. We spoke about how your father influenced you. That's seeing art growing up, seeing a competitor at SVA, seeing the work theirs, coming to the league and being in this environment and witnessing the history and legacy of fine arts and being a part of that, and then taking that and putting it into this hip hop legend to bolster his legacy. Same with you, Steven. You're taking the hours that you've learned in anatomy, the hours you spend on a computer and sculpting. I just thought that it's a great moment to project to the world. And I would love for both of you to talk about your process in making your Notorious B.I.G. piece and the inspiration that Biggie has for your work.
Sure.
Let's start with you.
Okay. I am 54, so I am a child who grew up with hip hop as the soundtrack, of my youth and growing up, especially my formative years, teenager, coming of life. So it's always been there in a very strong current. So with that foundation, it would naturally arrive in my work, and in understanding hip hop, in its conversations and even in its arguments, there's this notion of the top five, who are your top five favorite MCs. And this is, has a lot of contention comes along with it. It's arguably who are the top five, So I don't know if you put them up there. For me, I understand that the five that I've put in a photograph roughly are the top five celebrated: Jay-Z, Nas, Christopher Wallace, Biggie, Kendrick, and Rakim, representing old Rakim, one of the early pioneers of hip hop, to the new, which is Jay-Z, Nas, and Biggie, and what's current right now. Arguably, you could say these are the top five.
That's a very strong list.
Yeah. Personally, I like Andre 3000. He's my favorite. Who you have the privilege of knowing and working with. Yeah. So in that notion of top five, and how this energy runs in these streets, they're almost like generals, or almost royalty as well. So that's how I came up with this concept for this piece, because why is this young man from Brooklyn with this particular garb on, like royalty, or European royalty, or a military uniform on? And in a lot of senses, that's how hip hop is viewed, practiced. Who is royalty? Who is at the top? Who these rankings? Who is the general? And I'll ask you too. Do you think Biggie is at the pinnacle? Is he?
Yeah, when you have the Mount Rushmore, you got to say Jay, Biggie, Pac, Nas, right?
Yeah.
That's the. But then I think we all have our personal top fives that may not make it to that mountain, but you just like to listen to them. So, I have a guy like Elzhi, who's a Detroit rapper that I love. I love MF Doom. He's my favorite rapper. Black Thought is one of those guys. Master Ace is one of those guys for me. But Biggie is like a larger than life figure, and we forget how young he was to do everything that he did. That he was early 20s, man. That's insane to have that kind of iconic stature as such a young man, and just command that weight. And that's kind of what I try to put into my work for him. But yeah, I know how important of a
Yeah.
figure he is, especially in New York.
Yes, yeah.
Worldwide, but New York,
Yeah.
especially Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So I hope that, I think we all did him right.
Yeah.
For the, you know.
So, I mean, these artists the conversations argued back and forth, but as I understand it, history gives that title to Biggie. But going back to the painting, why I chose this particular style of European painting, it stems from my teaching here, my taking classes, particularly Max Ginsburg, who is, I believe he's born here, but I believe he's a Russian Jew, I think. So he has a great appreciation for Russian arts, So in class, he would tell us about Krumskoy or Ilya Repin, and in looking at how these artists portrayed light and texture and the stories behind the pieces. I wanted to introduce that to this work, after, years of studying these European painters, and giving that prominence to Biggie as a royal figure, Yeah. So that was my intentions with this painting.
Yeah, well, you hit home with that, I'll talk about my piece, and then I want to get more in detail with what the symbolism is, but we actually went a long time. So for my Biggie, my work has evolved over the course of a few years doing hip-hop monuments, creating hip-hop monuments. And I understand that, see, my mentor told me something really particular about technology and fine arts. He always said that while he was developing his paintings, and photography became very popular, they say photography is going to come in and take away the arts for the painter. No painter's going to be able to survive, right? But he creates art that a photograph cannot, a actual camera cannot create by itself. And I always thought that, my God, I should create work that a computer or any type of technology would not be able to create. So by blending, your traditional sculpture of modeling clay with figurative works, I wanted to incorporate technology and play the music of the actual artist. So by having the music playing inside of it, I needed to house it in a certain way. I love cars, grew up with my brother, loving cars. I love the sharp lines of architecture. So it was very important for me to create a piece that was different from the traditional figurative work, but also incorporate the music. And the problem solving for that was where would I tap the power source? So I decided to go with solar power. And that kind of helped to design the actual piece, because I can't buy or create a solar panel myself to a certain dimension. So whatever dimension in the solar panel I bought, I had to design around that so that it can work well with the aesthetic of the sculpture. So the metal fabrication works with that, and having lights, having the music on at certain times, and just having traditional work. Like, my favorite artist is Bernini, and he creates these incredible, highly detailed sculptures of popes and regal figures, and I love that. I love seeing the Renaissance traditional sculptures. So that's in my love of art, and it shows up in my work. And so for me, process is part of the journey, it's part of who you are, it's part of your story. And solar panels, music, monuments, hip hop, fine arts. that's where I am, right? That's the kind of lane I'm carving out for myself. And it's been really an incredible journey with that. So I'm just kind of curious because from the work I know of you, Jules, you do traditional painting and sculpture, but you also incorporate other aspects of creativity with wood and found objects. And then with you, Steven, you're on the computer and you're taking all of the lessons that a fine artist that uses traditional aspect of sculpture, and you plopped it in the computer, which the young folks, I'm sure, would love to hear about. So we'd love to hear process and process. How do you arrive at the works that you create?
Sure. What Sharon is describing, excuse me, is very sculptural aspects in my life, in my work. It's just not two-dimensional painting. I incorporate a lot of fabrics, metal, wood, found objects in my piece. And that's my intentions in that is to emotionally bring the viewer in a way that ties them into time, space, a particular era. And by using these materialistic devices, it will talk about 1920s or 1850s. So that's my means of, a visual dialogue to bring the person in even closer to the piece. And it's limitless when you approach art in that way. You're not just a two-dimensional canvas. It broadens your scope and your practice, your studio, the space with all this material and having there.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, makes the work really interesting and a visual, tactile. It becomes not more, but greater than what you expect, right? Steven, how about you? Like, what's...
Yeah, I mean, the first step is always research for me. Like, I know these albums, I know the videos inside and out, but it's always important for me to kind of take a deep dive back into the music and take notes, screenshots of videos, track lists and all that. And from there, I start developing a sketch. I'll usually do just kind of like little thumbnails of how the piece might look. But I've started to go onto the computer much earlier in the process now. Using a program called ZBrush. It's essentially like having a digital ball of clay. I was very amazed the first time I used it how much it was actually like sculpting clay. You can push, pull, but there's other things that you just couldn't do as far as undoing, changing proportions. It's just not possible in clay like it is by using digital sculpting and 3D printing. With Biggie, that was kind of a watershed piece for me because where I was kind of making the other hip-hop artists just like comic book artists, I really want to incorporate more of his music into the piece and things from his life. So that's where you get the bodega in the back that everybody kind of knows, that freestyle that he did when he was like a 17-year-old. There's graffiti all over the piece of every single song that he's made. So I think it's really important to kind of go back and gather your research, and you'll never know what song is going to hit differently 25 years later, and you may kind of pick something from that, or you see a video and that'll spark something in a piece. So that's kind of the process that I'm working with.
Yeah, dope. I mean, I've visited Steven's studio, and I've seen some of the process, the computers, the lighting that you have, the studio setup you have to get you in that working state of mind, and it's pretty impressive. Thank you. Quickly describe what you feel your contribution to culture, and particularly your Biggie piece. How do you feel your Biggie piece contributes to the culture of hip-hop, art?
I've hoped that I've carved out my own kind of space in hip-hop. I mean, I don't think anybody has kind of done collectible statue like that before. And I hope that, when I'm finished, or as I keep going, that like you needed a Panicoli album cover or a Hastings album cover. Like when you do the album rollout, you need the statue to go with it, right? Like I hope that's just like another level to hip hop music. So yeah, and I hope I did justice to everybody that I've worked with. I know how important a lot of these figures are, especially and it means a lot to me, and I'm grateful to be able to work with the estate and all the rappers that I've worked with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you contribute to the culture, and by having this, sculpture is something that's in your space, right? You come across it, you encounter it, and having your sculptures at that scale allows it to live in more spaces, right? It's more accessible, and I think it's a showpiece that whoever owns one is proud of it, to showcase that this is who this person is. Let me tell you a story. I may have a big story. Let me tell you, So it's really, I think, a huge contribution to culture.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. How about you, Jules? How's this incredible painting that you've masterfully created and you think contribute to the culture?
As a contemporary artist working in the here and now, we choose what we decide to work on, right? You can work on any array of things. And that painting represents the here and now, me choosing to do that. And within that, it expresses Black culture, one of the biggest phenomena in American history. You had jazz, you had blues, now you have hip hop. It was just swept the world. So in capturing the here and now, I chose to, speak about one of its artists that's at its pinnacle, that states so much, especially if you know him or the history of hip hop, you know what he represents. And as an artist, trying to tap into that and capture that, that is an avenue in which historically artists, speak about their times, what is happening, what is in fashion, what is in vogue politically. So I think that's my choice, and taking my time to paint that, Biggie.
Right, right. I echo that. It's really, one could say the artist's job is to hold the mirror up to society and show the world itself through your art. For me, quickly, we have just a few time left. I would say, I think my impact from my work is, I think the intention is to monumentalize our hip-hop figures, but also our culture, and place it for the world to come and see, right? Just like that story of visiting Salzburg and Mozart is to showcase, these incredible cultural shifters and have their contributions to the world come to their home base and see where they grew up. For example, we have the street sign that is, that showcase Biggie's home base, right? And we're lucky to have the sign provided by Mr. Leroy McCarthy, who runs the outdoor gallery, curated the outdoor gallery right at the intersection of Jim James Place and Fulton Avenue. So yeah, this is Biggie's impact, and folks come from around the world to visit that said place with the murals and my sculpture. So having Biggie, in three various, creative, very highly creative, highly crafted works of art, I think helps to expand hip-hop and expand the culture. And I think the three of us are doing a great job of making that happen.